Welcome back to the Nectar series. What I want to show today is the pollination module of Nectar. So in pollination, what we're going to start out doing is creating a contract. We're going to do that up here to add our contract. We have our existing contract shown here on this page, but we're going to add a fresh one just for this purpose. I'm going to call it Miller's Citrus. And it is going to be an orange grove. We'll put in the number of hives required. Let's say it's 200 in this case. There's a number of optional things you can do, like dates the bees go in or out. Typically here, the contact name would be like someone, the orchard manager, someone you would get in touch with inside the orchard if you have issues or concerns to talk about. We have to add the phone number here in international format, so the +1 and an area code. And we'll put in a phone number there. You can also add an email, as you can see. Number of optional details that can be added, address, notes, etc. We'll just breeze through this for the purposes of this video. Now you can see here that we have the basics of the contract. Still our hives on the map and our hives on site are both at 0. So that'll be one of our next steps. One of the nice things is next year, once we create all this, we can just renew the contract if we're going to be back there again doing the same contract. We can also archive it if we won't be going back there. We can export the maps. Sometimes that's nice for hand a paper map to someone who may not have access to Nectar, or to say the grower. You can say, hey, here's our plan, our layout. So you can export maps and a few other options. As I mentioned, our next step is going to be creating our pollination map. So it's going to start us off in Africa, which this pollination contract is not in Africa. It is here in Northern California. So let me zoom in and we'll start getting our mapping laid out. So this is the citrus grove that we're going to use for our example. My first step here is going to be editing the map. And you can see this gives me 3 options up here: creating blocks, creating drops, and creating points of interest. I usually start out by creating the blocks. This could just be one block, but a lot of times you do separate blocks. Like this, you can see it's separated by a road, kind of a north and a south side to this orchard. So it'll make sense to just make a couple of blocks, give us the acreage, makes it easier on the mapping side to create these 2 blocks. Sometimes, they might be called different things by the grower. And so it'll help employees kind of keep straight where we need to place the bees when we create these different drops. I don't need to be very exact. Look, I could get in here and but mostly this just giving me rough areas and acreage counts. This one you can see is about 2.5 acres. So we got our block south, our block north created. Now I can also, before I create the drops, I can throw in a couple points of interest. These are pretty nice. Like right here is the gate to get into the property. So let's just call this one main gate. You can see there's a lot of different types. We can add these details in English and Spanish. I could add say there's like an additional road that you want to go in on. I could do that. If there was something wrong with the road, or say a hazard, I'm just going to say road is out. And again, I could add those full descriptions in English and Spanish there. But this will show up on the Nectar app for employees, all this information. Now the next step is adding the drops. We don't have to do this here in the manager's portal. The things I've shown thus far can only be done here on the manager portal. Everything with creating drops, placing hives, all of that can be done in the actual Nectar app. But sometimes it's really convenient to place these drops here in the manager's portal, because then employees who may not be familiar with the orchard or where to place the bees, how many to place in each location, you can specify all of that now, and then it will sync up to the Nectar app. So when employees get to the orchard, they're going to know exactly what the layout's going to be. Instead of flagging trees with flagging tape or posts or whatever your method is, the employees can go right to the spot and drop the bees. You don't have to get the location exact on here. It can just be roughly as far as getting numbers. If the employees place the bees in a spot that isn't exactly at that drop, it will move the drop once the bees are scanned into Nectar. So this doesn't matter if you're not very exact. We're just going to go through here. If we do drops of 16, that's roughly 13 drops. I'll create this first one here of 16 hives. Now what's nice is as I go through and click, it will just default to 16, and I just hit enter. So we'll create our 13 drops. Drop 6, we'll come over here. All right, so we've got our 13 drops here on the map. Now, maybe you end up creating all these drops, and let's say they ask for extra bees, or you go through your hives, you pick up a bunch of dead outs, and you just decide, hey, we're going to make another drop. No problem. It doesn't matter that you didn't make that drop here in the manager's portal. Like I mentioned, you can create drops both from the Nectar app, assuming that their employee role is a manager, or you can do it here in the manager's portal. But this is really nice to get it all pre-laid out. And then when you're moving bees at night, it's a new orchard, you know exactly where you are, where those bees need to go, how many to place into each drop. You can see the drops are numbered. So here's drop number 4, 0 of 16 hives are in there currently. I'm going to hit done here. And that's everything I need to do to set up a new contract. If I go back here, we can now see the hives on the map are 208 out of 200, and hives on site are still 0. Our points of interest are listed down here, and now we will jump into the Nectar app and take a look at how we set hives and what other options we can work with inside this contract called Miller Citrus. All right, here we are in the citrus grove. We're gonna place our hives this morning. We kind of mowed a good spot. See the citrus trees back here. There's our truck. We'll be placing these and then scanning them in on the app, and I'll show that in a second. Okay, now let's scan these hives into the Miller Citrus Grove. I'll open up the Nectar app. As you can see, we're right between drops 3 and 4. We're actually a little closer to drop 4, so let's scan them into that drop. You can see that drop 4 is selected, and down below you want to make double sure that that white box down below says the drop that you're wanting to scan the hives into. Sometimes it may show a different drop down there, and you'll scan them into the wrong drop. So if I slide across, you can see that I can select other drops. You can see I'm right in between 3 and 4, but we're going to scan these into 4. And you can also see I'm not exactly on drop 4 here with the hives, but that's okay. It'll move it over here as soon as we scan these hives in. Drop 4 will actually move to the location of the hive, so it's not a problem that they aren't placed exactly in the spot. Let's add our hives. I'm actually going to do this today with QR rather than with the gun. Just for a little variety. I've typically been showing it done with the gun, but I wanted to show that it's quite quick to do this. You know, with smaller drops, it doesn't take long to scan with the QR codes. And we'll get our 16 hives added into this drop. And our last 2. Okay, I'm gonna hit next. And now you can see that it's going to move 16 hives into drop 4. You can still see drop 4 shows in a different location. Again, that's fine. I'm just gonna hit submit because I'm not doing any sort of inspection at this time. And now it shows 16 of 16 in drop 4. You're probably thinking, well, it's still showing in the old location. That's because it actually needs to update the information in the app for it to refresh the new location. So if I really want to see it in its proper spot, I'll hit refresh all data down here. That will update everything. It will sync between the server within the Nectar app, and then it will move the hives actually into this correct location. But if I'd launched Nectar at any later time, it would have shown them in the new spot. You can see now drop 4 is no longer over there by that umbrella. It's now exactly where I'm standing. It's showing the 16 hives, and that's how you add hives into an existing drop. Now we're going to go over to the other spot we offloaded the hives. That's actually right here where that square is, right in the center of my screen. That's where those hives are. You can see there isn't any drop around there. We're going to create a new drop within this orchard. Let's go over there and do that now. Okay, we're adding one more drop into the Miller Citrus Grove. This particular drop I did not set up ahead of time in Nectar. So we will jump into the app and then see how we add hives that were not pre-set up as a drop in Nectar. It's not going to be a problem. You can do it either way. You can either pre-set up your drops, or you can just place the hives and then add the drop afterwards, which is what we'll do with this particular location. All right, so now we're going to record that second drop You can see where we are in the corner of the orchard there. There's no drops nearby. Drop 4 is the nearest drop. Drop 1 is quite a distance. You can see those are the 2 nearest ones to where we are. You zoom back in. So what I'll do is I'll click the plus down here at the bottom. I'm going to choose Add Hives. This is going to be new yard because it's a new drop. I've asked Nectar to update the wording here so it says new drop / new yard, or add a third box. But for now, we just need to remember that it's new yard, not existing yard. New yard because it's a new drop. Now, we're not going to give it a name because the system's automatically going to assign it a drop name. But what we need to do is assign it to the orchard. So when I click assign here, it's going to bring up the closest orchard to me, which is the Miller Citrus Orchard. I'll choose that. And then I'll click next. You can see that I'm now assigning it. That box for the name has been grayed out because we're assigning it to an orchard, so it'll be a drop. It's going to ask me if I'm sure I want to do that. It will automatically give it a name. We'll hit continue. This time, why don't we use the RFID gun? Okay, we're connected, and come along just for speed. And there's our 16. So you can see we've got our 16 hives that we moved in. And tell where those are, right at that corner of the orchard like I talked about. I'm going to hit submit. 16 hives have been added. It created drop 14. Now again, we don't see that drop here on the screen just because it hasn't updated with the server, but you can see that it's now showing us at drop 14. I will update that data by refreshing the account, just to show everyone what that looks like. All right, and here we are. So again, we only had 13 drops before. Now we have 14 drops, and you can see this drop here at the corner of the orchard. So it doesn't matter whether you pre-populate them on the computer or you just drop the hives and then scan them in. It'll work exactly the same. The system will auto-create the next drop in sequence, as you can see here with drop 14. So those are the different ways you can modify and add hives to an existing orchard. All right, one of my favorite features of the pollination module is the ability to set drops as emptied or unloaded. Unloaded on the front end and then emptied as you move them out. And the reason you would use this is, let's say at night you're offloading a semi, you're getting an orchard placed, but you don't want to take the extra time to scan every hive into all the drops that night. You'd rather come back the next day and do that work in the daylight, or say when you're working the drops at some future point. So what you can do is you can actually mark all those drops as unloaded, and it will change their color, and it will communicate to the other employees which drops in an orchard have already been placed and then which ones still need to be placed. And that way you're all in sync and you aren't going back, potentially having one crew go over to place hives where another crew has already placed them because there was a miscommunication. Everybody can see within the Nectar app which drops have been placed and which ones still remain. And then conversely, on the other end, as you're moving hives out, you're probably, you're going to wait to scan those when they arrive at their destination, but you want to know that those drops have been removed. And so again, you can set those drops as unloaded on the back end as you move hives out of the orchard. And now let's jump into the app and I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so now we're going to launch the Nectar app. And you can see here in the orchard, I've got drop 3, for example, has 3 hives in it. We've got a yard very close here called the Mandarin Orchard Yard. And you can see I have various drops that are this purple color. I have other drops that are still in the gray. The purple are drops that have been marked as unloaded, and we're gonna go through that right now. So I'm gonna select drop 9 here in this orchard, which does not currently show that there are any hives there or it's been unloaded. It's just the same as when I originally created it. I'm gonna choose the 3 dots there in the upper right corner of the white box, and you can see that pulls up an option that says set as unloaded. So once I confirm that I really want to apply that change and mark it as unloaded, you just saw the color changed to purple now. So I can go through the orchard, I've unloaded all my hives, I can mark either each drop as I go, or when I kind of finish up offloading my truck, I can just go through, select the various drops. I can also do it by choosing anywhere in the white box there. For example, drop 8, you can see here it also has the set as unloaded icon there. So either way, for drop 8 here, I can either do the 3 dots or anywhere in the white. I usually choose the 3 dots because it's just a quicker way to do it. And drop 7, I'll do the same. Set as unloaded, I'll apply that. So now I've got that entire side of the orchard marked. I'm gonna refresh my data and make sure everything's showing up accurately. And then I want to show you guys how we set as emptied when we've actually moved those hives out. Because again, it's gonna take all the way till we scan them at their new location before they actually would get pulled out of the orchard. And they may be in transit for multiple days and then in a holding yard, and they're still gonna show that they're in that orchard. So to communicate to employees what drops have been emptied, so everybody's on the same page and we know there aren't any hives being left out in the orchard, we'll mark our drops as emptied. Let me come in here and you can see here drop 3, for example, that has the 3 hives. Let's choose that drop and let's set that one as emptied. It's gonna give me a prompt whether I want to actually follow through with that. Now you can see the color has changed to blue. So again, purple for unloaded drops and blue for emptied drops on the back end. So purple drops still need to be scanned in. You know, I could go around later today, scan those in to Nectar, and then they'll show green. Then that's kind of the progression. They're gray when you first create them. Then they would be purple when you set them as unloaded. Then they turn green when you scan them into the Nectar app. Then they turn this blue color when you set them as emptied. And then once all those hives get scanned at their new location and they get actually pulled out of the orchard to where that number, instead of saying 3 out of 16, it will say 0 of 16, it will go back to gray, okay? And then you're back to the start with no hives in that spot. So that's kind of the progression of the various options. You don't have to use the unloaded and emptied. You could just scan the hives as they arrive, and then you could scan them in their new location when they get there. But we find this is really helpful to keep everyone in sync as you're kind of rushing to get hives in or out of an orchard. All right, I wanted to highlight another possible situation here in pollination. In this particular orchard, we went through, worked the hives, picked up some dead outs, and we were slightly short of our contract amount. So we brought in half a load of bees. We dropped 2 pallets at a number of different drops throughout the orchard to get our numbers where they needed to be. Now, those additional pallets have not yet been scanned in to those drops. This is one of those drops here behind me, and it's kind of a good example because I actually don't know which of these pallets were here from the original, when hives were originally scanned in, and which ones have been more recently added. But we'll jump into the app and we're gonna scan all these hives. The app is smart enough to figure out which ones were already here in this drop and which ones have been added, and then it will add those hives to this drop and update those numbers. So let's take a look in Nectar. Okay, so I'm gonna start off by launching the Nectar app. You can see here I'm in the Kaiser Pit Orchard and I'm at drop 21. You wanna make sure that the drop in the white box below is matching where you're standing and the drop you've selected. So I'm standing, you can see my blue dot there at D21. Shows 10 hives in this location, and we're gonna be adding additional hives in. It's the exact same process as adding hives any other time, but I wanted to show that you can't accidentally add double hives or anything like that. You don't have to be concerned about knowing which ones have already been added to the drop and which ones are the new ones, because I don't know which ones they are. I'm gonna click Add Hives. I'll choose my RFID. I'll connect that up. And now as I come along here, you see how it's giving me this error, hive is already in the yard. So clearly these ones were already here. I'm gonna move over to the other hives and let's see, here they are. These are the ones that they brought in. And I know they said 2 pallets per drop, but I'm just gonna scan everything. So there's my 8, and I've got 1 more pallet over here to scan. I'm guessing it's gonna say already in the yard. Yep, as expected. So no worries about double adding hives to a drop. The system figures that all out and knows what's already there. It knows which ones aren't there. I'll click next, and you can see this drop is gonna go from 10 hives. And when I hit submit, it'll add these additional 8, and we'll have 18 hives in this drop. And there it is.